Joining us now in the Cipher Brief Studio is Joey Gagnard. Joey, you are on the ground in Kyiv. You've been there for several days now, touring different parts of the country. We won't get specifically into where, but you have been to the front lines. You've been talking with military leaders there. What are you hearing about the sense of how this battle is progressing, especially at this point when there's so much sort of hand-wringing over whether and how this might come to an end? How are things on the ground?
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for having me. First off, I'll tell you that the battle is progressing exactly in the way that it has previously. As the Ukrainians make advances in technology, the Russians are adapting. They're adapting their techniques and tactics for trying to impose costs against the Ukrainians and vice versa. It still remains sort of a rat race of technological development here in Ukraine. A lot of the commanders are super frustrated with the resource constraints that they have, but they're doing the best they can. And I can tell you that the main thing that many Ukrainians have told us that is their biggest benefit, it's their biggest strength is that morale remains high. And based on our own observations during our travels, I'll tell you that that's exactly the case.
Joey, when you and I were there together in May, there was a lot of focus on innovations in technology, on getting information as quickly as possible from the battle space to the commanders and sort of integrated into intelligence pick. I mean, there's just so much to talk about, the drones, the counter drones. Have you seen anything during this visit that marks a change for you or a progression or has the pace, maybe the tempo picked up since May?
I mean, yeah, there's some significant advances that have been made here. I think probably since May, since we were here before, the Ukrainians have once again sped up the information flow from the front lines all the way back to the command centers where they're making decisions on use of some of their weapon systems. Unfortunately, some of the constraints that they have logistically, some of the weapon systems that they're receiving, continue to run short. They're still very, very dependent on Western support for some of the weapon systems that they don't have that they need in order to impose more costs against the Russians. But they're making tremendous advances in terms of how they use information and the speed at which information is going from the point of capture back to the command centers. The commanders are very aware that the way that they were trained to do business is not going to be sufficient, and they've made some adaptations to align more with some of the NATO standards that they've obviously become aware of through their relationships with the different people here in country. And so I'd say that I'm super impressed with the adaptations that the Ukrainian commanders continue to make breaking away from the training and the doctrine that they were sort of steeped in whenever they were coming up as young officers and young soldiers, those commanders that do have military experience. And you can see it paying dividends for them. The most effective units seem to be adopting some different tactics, looking critically at the battle spaces that they're operating in and some of the technologies that they have at their disposal and making maximum use of them. It's extraordinarily impressive to watch what they're doing with the resources that they have.
Joey, we hear a lot about the challenges they're facing. Just final question to you, because I know you have to run. You've got a busy agenda while you're on the ground there in Kyiv. But final question to you is, what opportunities do you see for the military in the next several months?
But that's a great question. I'll tell you, you know, there's the Ukrainians are doing a phenomenal amount with the limited technology that they have. They've got for the Ukrainian theater, the technology that they've developed during this conflict is absolutely the best thing out there, the best thing anywhere in the world right now for this theater. A lot of American companies are making great technology that is focused on different priorities. I think there's some real opportunities to invest in some of the tactics and some of the things that the Ukrainians are doing to better understand that in the West, especially with some of the policies that are coming out of the Pentagon, trying to make our defense industry more agile and more nimble. I think there's some real opportunities to sort of foster those relationships with the Ukrainians and see how they're doing business, see how they've tied industry into their defense ecosystem. I think that's a major opportunity for us. Similarly, some of the things that they've done with open source information and stuff, I think are real opportunities for our defense enterprise to take lessons from, frankly. Aside from that, I'm still a huge advocate for having closer military integration, shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian armed forces here in Ukraine. I think that that would make an outsized impact if we could get somehow get combat soldiers involved with Ukrainian armed forces in any capacity. I think it would be welcome, and I think it would, like I said, have an outsized impact on sort of our all of our strategic interests.
Yeah, that'll be more of a policy decision at this point. On the
Of
ground
course,
in Kyiv, Joey Gagnard, thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time to kind of put some context around what we're seeing there. It's good to see you,
of
my
course,
friend.
yeah. And thank you for having me.